Hello and welcome to the Farmhouse. I'm Stephanie Spiker.
And I'm Candace Wierzbowski.
And I got the chance to talk recently with Dr. Nicole Irizarry, who is a large animal veterinarian based in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. So back in the fall of 2023, Nicole opened her own mobile vet practice, Kissel Hill Veterinary Services, and she pretty much offers on-farm services for about a 25-mile radius. And she works on all kinds of animals, so horses, cows, goats, sheep, and occasionally things like donkeys and mini cows. Before starting her own practice, Nicole worked in a group practice for 7 years. She graduated with a bachelor's degree from Penn State before going to vet school at Cornell. And though Nicole didn't grow up in agriculture, she always dreamed of being a vet, even as a little kid. And during her studies, she was drawn to the large animal side, and she's never looked back. So, Candace, did you ever have the fairly common dream of becoming a vet?
You know what? Actually, I didn't. I, for a while, really wanted to be a marine biologist. That was kind of my childhood dream.
You know, that's not, far off.
Still in the zoological realm.
I feel like a lot of kids say that they want to be a vet because, you grow up loving animals. And I don't know if I ever wanted to be a vet because I don't like blood. But I know my mom actually initially, she studied microbiology, and I think she initially thought about going to vet school at one point, but ended up changing her mind. But apparently for Nicole, it was she was a little kid, she wanted to be a vet, and it stuck throughout all of childhood, which is impressive because I feel like my initial dream as a kid was to be an artist, painting, which I am not good at. So.
Well, what did Picasso say? Every child is an artist. You could still be an artist. You don't have to do it professionally.
I do love the paint and sip type of classes where they're telling you step by step how to paint a picture. I do find that very fun, but not all childhood dreams pan out. Nicole's did though, so so let's talk to Nicole and see what being a mobile large animal vet is all about.
Wonderful.
Nicole, welcome to the Farmhouse. Thank you for joining us.
I'm honored to be one of the guests.
You founded Kissel Hill Veterinary Services in the fall of 2023, which is fairly recent. So what led you to open your own practice? Because I know you've been working as a vet a lot longer than that.
Yeah, so I guess the big thing was that I wanted to stay in large animal. I guess my first job was in a true mixed animal practice in rural upstate New York. I did about 75% of my time out of the truck, large animal farm calls, and then 25% of my time seeing small animal appointments, doing surgery, doing emergency medicine. And then sort of into my second job, it was a little bit more shoved into the large animal category. Certainly everything was truck-based and farm call-based with very few exceptions. And all of the small animal was pretty general, basics, wellness, euthanasia, vaccinations, but no kind of complicated medicine sorts of cases on small animal, no C-sections or any surgery, which I liked to tell people how many years it had been since my last C-section anytime they wanted to bring it up. So right now I am just kind of my own truck-based business, and I do some, small animal euthanasia of house pets, and I do some, limited vaccination, wellness. I've had people ask if I'll carry specialty small animal medicine, and I've pretty much said no way. But the joke is that if you can get 5 cats together, or if people want to get 5 cats and they all need the same vaccines, then I will stock cat vaccines. Because right now I only stock rabies for cats, and certainly provide euthanasia services for them. So it's that's my very limited small animal foray, and I felt that I'd been doing large animal medicine for long enough that I could rely on my skills in being a vet and, go into doing that as my full-time gig. I hope.
So it sounds like, you kind of knew from the beginning that you wanted to go specifically into large animals. So why, what made you choose that path when getting into veterinarian?
So I guess if I go back to being a young college student and like a high school senior, I wanted to be a vet, but I was very open to what I would do with the degree and how I would be in the field. I definitely grew up in suburbia. I grew up with a little bit of a horse background, but I was never considered a horse person, and I definitely didn't get into the agricultural animals and cattle specifically until college, but I went to Penn State and I wanted to stay open to all of the different things I could do. So I milked at the dairy barn at Penn State and rode with some phenomenal and very open veterinarians that actually hosted a decent amount of students. So it didn't matter to them that I was from suburbia, and they were willing to show me what they did and teach me. And I definitely know them in my broader professional network today. Maybe I don't talk to every single person that let me talk their ear off in the truck for hours, but I do keep in touch with one in particular who is on the board or employed by National Milk Producers Federation. And definitely that individual was very influential in just, not growing up with dairy, growing up with sheep and some other kind of farm animals, but proving to me that you didn't need to be from a farm to be an excellent farm animal veterinarian.
It's awesome. I don't think I didn't know going into this that you didn't really have an ag background, which I feel like I don't have an ag background either. I also went to Penn State and I studied journalism and then minored in ag communication. So, it also for me was kind of college when I got into the ag industry a little bit. And then obviously working here, and, more and more every day, I'm learning more about the industry. And I feel like on this podcast, it's been kind of 50-50 of guests who grew up in ag and knew that's what they wanted to do, and then people who kind of figured it out like later in life. So yeah, that's awesome that you ended up in large animal because not as many people head that direction.
Yeah, and on the one hand, it's understandable because it's like, there's millions and millions of cats and dogs in the country, and most of them are owned by individuals or families. So you rarely will run across somebody that has more than like 3 or 4 pets, depending on the area, of course, because some people do have a breeding kennel or a lot of acres. But I think it's very different with farming because most of the time you're going to work with an owner, a farmer that has several dozen or several hundred, or sometimes in the case of chickens and pigs and feeder cattle, several thousand animals. It's a very different approach.
I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I did want to ask about your operation specifically. I mean, you've had your own practice for about a year and a half ish. So, how has it grown and evolved in that short amount of time? Like, did it take a little while for your client list to grow, or did it kind of take off right off the bat?
So I will definitely say I nominally opened my business in 2023 and didn't see a client till 2024.
Okay.
So my my 2023 taxes are a little sad because I put tens of thousands of dollars into buying my starter equipment, my starter inventory, and then the first client I saw, I believe, on January the 4th of 2024. So if I think about what I thought the practice would be and what the practice ended up being through the first 12 months, and then what it looks like it will be through what I would say is my second busy season, it's definitely seemed that the need is in people to provide a sort of middle ground, but yet be uh, very devoted or very uh, invested in the outcome of uh, individual horses. So I think in our area of Lancaster County, we have some phenomenal 100% horse veterinarians. Obviously, they'll see donkeys and mules a little bit too, but they are in some way specialists on the general equine practice. And then we have people who are more interested in other species, but will see horses just because they're interested in some aspect of, maybe co-managing cross species for a certain client, being able to offer that service. I think what is very important to me is that I'm not fancy, and I remember reading through either student expectations or other sorts of dress code requirements, and the idea of wearing khakis just makes me cringe. But in some very high-end equine clientele, the khakis are expected. And it is because, the horses are pretty clean. And if you have to deal with some, bloody situation or something really filthy dirty, those situations are few and far between. Whereas in the dress code, the informal dress code of my current practice, I have a lot of clothes that are black, blue, green. My favorite is when I wear the maroon and then I have to see something muddy or bloody. It works to hide both. I think it's important for me to be a quality service provider without looking fancy or like I don't belong, because I am seeing so many different things each day, and that variety is what's interesting to me about my practice.
Yeah, it isn't. I've always kind of, on a much smaller, less dramatic scale, wondered why it is like the tradition in dairy showmen to wear all white, because I'm like, that's not going to stay that color. So I get your thinking with the khaki.
Yeah. Um, and I think if I had to like guess a percentage breakdown of where my practice is right now, like from start of seeing clients to date, I would probably be very close to 60 or 65% like horses, mules, and donkeys. Um, I would say my practice is probably about 5% uh, dogs, mostly a little bit of the cat at home euthanasia, like I said. Um, and then that remainder 30 would be pretty evenly split between dairy cattle and sheep and goats, being 15% each. I do work with some beef cows. I do work with some, uh, pet mini cattle, just because when you have land, you can do a lot to populate your land with different sorts of companion animals. And don't be fooled, just because they're mini doesn't mean they can't hurt.
That's true. So, that's a lot of kind of different animals and just a lot of things that you're handling. So, as a one woman operation, how do you deal with like a full schedule of clients? Plus, as a vet, you get emergency calls on top of your day-to-day schedule.
So I think that's one of the things with growing a practice at this point. I don't feel that I am 100% full. Most of the time when I have to turn away potential calls, it is an emergency that I can't attend in a timely fashion. Whether it's the client that says, oh, you're that far away, or me saying, yeah, you should not wait for me to be available. I have had to do that. I have worked with the situation of large animal practice long enough that I feel like I have a good impression of how to schedule my pre-scheduled or my sort of routine calls to be able to absorb the sick the same day, the urgent care and the emergency. There have been a couple of times that I've seriously pushed people off several hours or even a couple of days because they were routine and I had another emergency that I had to triage ahead. Most of the time, animal owners are going to understand that just because they want to have that kind of service when they are in an emergency. In terms of the out of hours stuff, I mean, it's Thursday this week and there were 2 nights where I basically was out of my house for the 12 plus hours and got home after 9:30. Sometimes it just works out that way. And if I'm still getting enough sleep, I feel like I can run with that or roll with those curves. I do not pretend to be an organized human being or have it all together because goodness knows anyone who has experienced what my vet truck looks like says, oh, you should really organize that. And they're not wrong. But I hope that I am striking the balance of client service and being able to do what is asked of me while also being pretty available on the phone. I talk to a lot of people while driving, but also I am looking out for saving money on inventory purchases and trying to automate as much of my system as possible for billing or for writing out like client communications just to make it so that, yes, it's legwork in the beginning, but in the future, it'll be that much faster. So I definitely sit a lot of hours in front of the computer. I spend a lot of time on the phone and I spend a lot of time driving. And, maybe I'll pay myself a half respectable salary in 2025. We'll see.
Yeah. For any of our listeners who may not be aware, there's pretty much been a shortage of large animal vets for a number of years now. So we've touched on this a little already, Nicole, but in your opinion, why is it so tough to recruit veterinarians into the large animal side?
So I do think there's a little bit more of a problem with retention than recruitment because I have seen so many people either enter veterinary school as a intended large animal, intended rural practice, private practitioner, but I've also seen a lot of people drop out of private practice for a whole variety of circumstances. And it's not always the same reason. I went to school with people who went to vet school wanting to be professors and knew that that was an eventual track, but in some circumstances sort of jumped back into the world of teaching in college maybe sooner than you would guess or than they would have even planned at maybe the 3 to 5 year mark in their career rather than the 10-year mark. And I think some of it is because when you aspire to work outside of clinical practice in the private sector, you do have to get some credentialing, Masters of Public Health, PhD, a diplomat status on American Board of Veterinary Practitioners, preventive medicine, welfare, something like that. I do think there are people that really get burned by being on call due to the combination of practice, culture, of what the nature of those emergencies are. There are veterinarians who drive a 90-mile radius, and that blows my mind because most of my calls are within a 25-mile radius. I can't think of very many I've done outside of a 25-mile radius in my current solo practice. Um, I have known people who were vets married, one being in the small animal side and one being in the large animal side. And when you see your partner come home, even if they're working till 7 or 8, but a regular schedule of 10 to 12 hours and then be able to turn off and go to sleep and your phone is on and people are calling you, whether they just want to talk about something or they want to drag you out of bed at 4 in the morning. It's a very different perspective that you need to have. And I know that veterinarians are not alone in really trying to minimize the on-call after-hours emergencies and the obligation to attend those because more and more family practitioners are not providing full spectrum care from the obstetrical side and that sort of OB responsibility with the after hours, but also with the relative population density of people who are able to work in a full 100% companion animal practice or people who are working in mixed rural practices or large animal, the emergency clinic presence is an issue. So, I mean, it's an issue for the large animal people because sometimes our animals can't be winched onto a trailer ethically because they're down. Sometimes they're in a place where it's not safe or practical to get a trailer to them to bring them somewhere. But, you know, I remember as a student at vet school, like 160-pound mastiff that had collapsed and the owner brought it into the emergency room because that's what you did for your dog. Even in, and I don't know how far this individual had come from to Ithaca, New York, and the emergency facility at Cornell. So I think emergency is an incredibly large part, and the, I guess, appropriate charges for a companion or family member versus for someone who is really looking at a business transaction and saying, well, this animal has a finite value. I am blown away sometimes by just what people say to me in conversation when they find out I'm a vet about the thousands of dollars that they have spent in different surgeries or over years of specialist visits, and I don't know each animal. Sometimes they say to me, we've been in and out of the ER 3 times in the last 6 months, and those are really challenging cases, especially with older animals. When do you know that the end of life decision making is appropriate? And everybody's going to differ in that. And as a veterinarian, I can't really tell them what to do. I can strongly advise. I can't make anyone do anything. But if I can build trust and build a relationship with someone, I can hopefully convince them to listen. And I think that's where the people skills and the difference in small animal or companion animal medicine versus in working with people on a business level differs in terms of getting your really having the opportunity to form those long relationships.
Yeah.
So that was a really long answer. I don't know if that was
No, no.
appropriate.
I mean, I think hearing the perspective of someone who's in this every single day is very interesting and great for people to listen to. And back in January, actually, at the farm show, we did a farmhouse interview with two veterinarians, Dr. Erin Luley and Dr. Haley Springer. And both of them talked about, which is kind of what you've already brought up as well, the struggle of like a work-life balance within the large animal field. So, because as you kind of mentioned, if you're working at a vet office, you have like fairly normal, regular set hours that you're working, and then you get to go home. But obviously for you, you are mobile, you are on call, and I know you have listed on your website set hours, but as you were just saying, they don't seem to normally mean anything, seeing as you didn't get home till 9 p.m. 2 times this week. So, how do you balance? Do you have any kind of work-life balance, or is it kind of just day to day you're figuring it out?
I definitely think I fly by the seat of my pants right now. And I forget who described the work-life balance to me as uh, a seesaw, except that you're having a big boulder on one side at all times.
Okay.
It seems like for me, I am never a 50-50 split. I am either 100% or 90% in on my business, being by myself, as in away from my family and working with my clients or working with my software or working with my reps or working within my sketchy basement lab, which is basically where my microscope and my autoclave live. Um, and then I have these times where I don't drive my truck. I drive my personal, like, family car and go places with my family. And obviously, if somebody calls and I have to shuffle myself back home, jump in the truck and go, I will. But I also get to go to dance class with my daughter most weeks, and it's rare for me to completely miss church on a weekend, although it definitely has happened. Um, so I do feel right now, especially in the growth process with a new business, it's very scary to lose momentum. And having gone through more than 12 months of seeing clients and having the business so far, I have seen myself get busier and then slower and then busier again. So it's very difficult to know from 1 month or 1 week to the next kind of what my schedule is going to look like, how many places I'll end up going on a Saturday or Sunday, and whether or not I'll eat dinner at a normal time or eat dinner uh, driving alone in my truck to see a sick animal. Um, and those things are fine with me. I think it is what I signed up for. For some people, it would be a step too far, and that's totally fine.
I mean, I guess it's kind of what works for you, and I guess part of the benefit of having your own business is you are your own boss and you get to kind of make the decisions that make sense for you, even if some people it wouldn't make sense for them, right? So it's what works for you.
hmm I tell people, or especially in the beginning, that I have to live and die by my own sword now. And it's, every little thing that would have irked my coworkers or my bosses in group practice life, I have to deal with all of that. I know how flawed and disorganized I am, and I know the frustration of thinking you had one more bottle of this size medication, but oh, turns out you only have it in the other size. And I just have to live with that, make me my small fall from grace in front of the client and say, oh, sorry, I don't have that. I can offer you this instead. And most of the time they laugh a little bit about how disorganized I am, and we move on.
I feel like we've had a couple like heavier questions, so I'm going to give you what I think is a lighter one. So, we already talked about just the large variety of animals that you work with. Do you have a favorite species?
So I definitely used to have a favorite species. Now I really don't know that I do. I like different things about the different species. I think goats are funny. They have huge personalities, but they're very dramatic. So sometimes you give them a shot and they just act like they're dying because it stings. Um, Sheep, I have really grown on me. My mom likes to remind me that I told her sheep are dumb once, and because they are so inclined to the group, the individual animal often will hide their signs of illness until they're very, very sick. So that can be kind of a difficult starting point. Um, but they can be very tough creatures to work on. Uh, I think cattle are just like incredible. They are metabolic machines. They're able to, uh, you know, package all of this wonderful food stuff for us, whether it's milk or meat, and they do it all in a relatively, uh, especially on the dairy cattle, a relatively kind personality. And the things that I have experienced of animals living with situations occurring inside that just blow your mind, maybe not thriving, but, cattle that had torn her uterus during the birthing process, and her placenta was just in her belly. She was alive
Ugh.
for days.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
had another school case again. Valuable individual at a veterinary school hospital who had a wire in her chest. They took off a piece of her one rib and just, flushed that area with antiseptic solution repeatedly, and like, by all accounts, she went on to do well. This cow got a wire in her chest because she ate it, because
Oh
cows
jeez.
are very indiscriminate eaters. And not everything that is sharp is magnetic, and thus isn't going to be picked up by a magnet in the feed mixer or a magnet that is indwelling in the reticulum of the second, second stomach of the cow. So it is kind of amazing that this wire migrated out of the stomach and into the chest cavity. And the cow was just standing there while the, equine sports medicine surgeon cut her rib off, and we took the wire out. It was
That's
amazing.
crazy.
And what I've told people a lot recently is that I like working with horses because it forces me to focus, because the saying is that uh, when you're with a horse, only one of you can freak out. It is never your turn. And
That's fair.
horses are very perceptive. They're going to pick up on little anxieties or nervousness in the people around them or in the other horses around them. Um, if I know that this horse has bitten or kicked at people and maybe has a little bit of a short fuse, I can approach that situation with the balance of, I'm going to touch you and go through my exam, and I'm going to give you space. And also, as I go through my exam, as I go through my questioning with the owner, we can be very focused on everything that would help us come to solve the problem or find the problem. And I am definitely prone to rambling. I am definitely prone to tangents. I think that when I have a little bit of a spastic horse to work with, it just centers me and focuses me in a way that None of the other animals do.
It's interesting. We always kind of joke that we save the big question for last, so I'm gonna hit you with another kind of hard one. What does being a woman in ag mean to you?
And I'm really happy that I listened to enough of the other episodes that I
Ah, you're
caught this
prepared.
question. So this is the first time I'm consulting my notes. We talked about how I did not grow up in a very rural area. I did not grow up on a farm. My extended family had a lot of interest in sort of animal rescue, specifically with dogs, but that extended family does not live close by. So I don't really know why veterinary medicine from like the little kid perspective, other than because everybody goes through that phase of wanting to be a veterinarian. So I think I've really, by continuing to be in ag, I've been able to spend all this time, probably we could say back to the start of my exposure to agriculture through the Pennsylvania Governor's School in 2007. I like to learn, and I have learned a lot by listening, going out with vets, going to farms, talking to them. I did not major in animal science, but I took the dairy management class at Penn State. I took the equine management class. I took a dairy systems class. I did the regional dairy challenge in my senior year. And as I look at the vet school class I graduated with, we were 100, so it makes my numbers easy. And there were 82 women. And there were 18 men, 3 of whom went into jobs with food animal clients in private practice, 2 of whom are still there. So that's pretty good. The 11 people that went out and worked with food animal that were women in my class, there are 3 of us still in private practice, and we're all in mixed or large animal practice. We're not specifically in a food animal exclusive or only works with pigs. Shout out to Joseph, my classmate who only works with pigs type of career. So I think it's just, for me, I am still here. I am persistent about being in this area, in this profession as a veterinarian that works at the, in the broader agricultural community. I was catching up with a classmate and said, "Oh, I'm about 15% dairy." And he said, "I wish that number was higher." And that meant a lot to me because this is a kid, my only veterinary school classmate that grew up on a dairy farm. And he continues to identify as a dairy vet, but also have a large management role with his family's farm, overseeing all the animal care staff, formulating all the rations, and, getting to be both a private practice veterinarian attending other farms and being a farmer himself in all of the ways that he's using his veterinary degree on his cattle. So I think that the sort of I chose to be here because it was really cool. Like, if I'll say, like, when cows were my favorite and I wanted to be a dairy vet, or at least a dairy predominant vet, that really kind of helped me solidify my interest. Obviously, with that being replaced a little bit by the horses, I still get to work with a variety of horses. The true pasture puff backyard pet and the workhorse or mule that's got to go in the field ideally tomorrow but can't because now they're sick and I'm seeing them. And I think it's not so much about being a woman specifically as much as it is being suburban origin woman and coming with that different perspective.
Wow. I really appreciate that answer. I love that you listened to enough episodes that you knew that that was coming. So
I don't know if that was cheating. Sorry.
no, we always welcome all of our guests to listen to past episodes. So thank you, Nicole, so much for joining me here at the farmhouse. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry for rambling, and I hope there's some nuggets in there that are valuable.
I'm sure there's plenty of them.
Steph, I found your interview with Nicole fascinating. I love hearing from vets. I find it incredible that so many of them work out of their cars or their trucks. I can't imagine just, having to put everything you're going to need for your profession into your vehicle and go. And, it's not probably one stop for the day. You're traveling around, and it's not just going and treating the cow or the sheep or the horse. It's then also having to do the paperwork, the administrative side that is associated with that kind of work. So
it's funny how a couple times she kind of mentioned that she's not necessarily the most organized person, and people have commented about her truck. But you know what? As long as she knows where to find things, that's all that matters. And it sounds like she's doing fine. And you know what? I work at a desk, and I would not necessarily say it's organized. Like, I know where things are.
And that's all that matters. It makes me think of, there have been times in my life where I've just been really busy and running around, and my car kind of gets pretty messy. And when I've had people in my car, I'll say oh, don't worry, I'm living out of my car right now, or it feels like I'm living out of my car. I can't imagine what someone who is literally working out of their car, what their car must look like, because she's probably also eating in there. She probably takes her lunch breaks if she's on the go, eating in the car. So yeah,
hectic lifestyle.
For real. But she's doing great work. And she also said something that I really liked and I hadn't really given any thought about. I wish I would have before this. And that's just how amazing cows are, when she was talking about how they need to be recognized more. And I was like, you're right. They are capable of feeding us, clothing us, actually, too. They provide, milk. They really are kind of incredible creatures. And to hear her talk about how apparently they also have these, I guess, fantastic pain thresholds that they're capable of just standing there while you're performing operative surgery on them.
And apparently their ability to just survive.
Yes.
Oh yeah, just metal wire lodged in the chest. She was just
no biggie.
She was just living her life with it until it came out. I'm sorry, what?
Absolutely crazy.
I would immediately die. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, that's how the human body works.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, let's give it up for cows, I guess.
We do love cows here.
The other thing that I really identified with was when she talked about how she dislikes wearing khakis. We're going to get personal here because I also intensely dislike wearing khakis. I don't know if it's just a texture thing. I can't stand them. They feel uncomfortable. I've never had a pair that I thought looked good on me. So yeah.
I agree. And at this point in my life, I don't actually own a single pair of khakis.
Neither will I, and I'm never going back.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't wear them ever, and I don't enjoy them, so I'm not going to own a pair, because why?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're both fortunate. We work at a place where we're able to dress comfortably, we're able to wear jeans, and I feel like if I do need to dress up, slacks, I'm fine with. I feel comfortable in those too, but for some reason, khakis get to me.
But yeah, khakis as a vet feels very impractical, which is pretty much what Nicole was saying. It's not going to stay that color throughout the day.
No. Yeah, when she talked about her maroon pants, I was like, that sounds like the right color to be wearing if you're going to be working in the veterinary field, because you're going to get some stuff on you that might not wash out perfectly. I don't know. Well, speaking of dressing practically for the farm or otherwise, we have a new podcast that has come out from us here at Lancaster Farming. We've talked about this show before on the Farmhouse, but here at Lancaster Farming, we're all fans of the show Farmer Wants a Wife. It airs on Thursday night on Fox at 9 Eastern Standard Time. And for the last 2 years, we've been covering it on our website at lancasterfarming.com. This year, we're branching out, and we are going to be talking about it on a new podcast called Farmer Wants a Wife After Party.
Yeah, it is out now, and we are still also doing our website coverage, so you have so many opportunities to get your Farmer Wants a Wife fix. So Please give it a listen if you've ever seen the show, or if you're just kind of curious about it, or if you just want some entertainment, because we have a really good time on that show. So please come join us.
We do. It's a real laugh. Steph hosts it. I'm there too, as well as our coworker Lindsay and a few other guests who will be stopping by later on in this season. Okay, I think that wraps things up for us. Thank you all for listening. If you liked this episode, please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. If you really like this episode, please consider leaving us a review.
If you have any questions or thoughts about this episode or the podcast, you can email us at farmhouse@lancasterfarming.com.
You can also find us on social media at Lancaster Farming on most platforms.
Thanks again for listening and visiting us at the Farmhouse. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Candace.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
This episode of The Farmhouse is copyright 2025 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family.
It was written by Stephanie Spiker and Candace Worsbowski. It was produced by Eric Herlock and Sophia Kurzius. The music is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.